Oh, you know what? Maybe I've confused Oath Keepers with Promise Keepers.
You're thinking of Promise Keepers, yeah.
That's right.
Oath Keepers are basically a militia organization that have popped up here in the last 4 or 5 years, and they're all about spreading fear of FEMA concentration camps. Their fans all listen to Alex Jones, and they're very closely aligned with the militia movement.
Well, then
But
then let me correct myself. Gary Busey was never in the Oath Keepers. He was a Promise Keeper, and apparently, apparently, around the time that I knew him, he apparently broke his promise. And they said we would rather not have you associated with us. Now, my understanding is that the Oath Keepers are not have not. Has there been some type of break between them and these Bundy folks, and
yes.
what is the nature of that? Is it ideological or political or what?
Yeah, it's strategic. No, I mean, the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters, who are a very closely aligned militia group with the Oath Keepers, were all present at the Bundy Ranch in April of 2014, and they made up the bulk of those supporters who were out there, including people who were pointing guns at federal agents. And they originally showed up in Burns to as supporters for the rally that was held on Sunday in support of the Hammonds. But what happened immediately after the rally was that the Bundy group then went to this bird refuge and took it over, and the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters have all said, we want no part of that. And so they've disavowed the people who are have taken over the bird refuge.
And who are the Three Percenters?
Three Percenters are another militia / patriot type organization. They're closely aligned with the Oath Keepers.
Where does the 3% come from?
They have this meme that they've worked out where that they claim that only 3% of the people who were actually in the colonies in 1776 participated in the revolution, and that basically they're a militia that looks forward to the Second American Revolution, of which they are going to be the 3% that fights and wins the revolution.
So they take inspiration from the fact that there were so few people involved in the actual first revolution. My sense is they're probably closer to 0.0003%. Or 0.00003%.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. But interestingly enough, now these guys, and especially the group that went over there to Oregon to originally do this rally on Sunday, a lot of them have been very heavily involved in Idaho in the effort to keep out the Syrian refugees. They've been very prominent in leading these public rallies. They had a big public rally in Boise on November 1st, supposedly protesting, or it was out to protest the presence of Syrian refugees in the Idaho refugee program. And then 3 weeks later, they also showed up as counter protesters at a rally that was designed to support the refugees. So these guys have been very active, and a number of them I know showed up in Burns. And one of the guys from that group I know was standing next to Ammon Bundy yesterday at the ranch or at his press conference. And this guy is a particular character. You remember all the photos from the Bundy Ranch of the guy laying down on the freeway pavement and aiming his sniper rifle at federal agents. This gentleman is named Eric E.J. Parker, and he lives there in Blaine County, Idaho. He was a member of the Idaho Three Percenters. He was standing right there next to Ammon Bundy at that press conference.
So I want to pivot to the question of race, but before we do that, I've noticed that Ted Cruz and particularly Cruz, I think, is its most sort of striking. Or that the Republican candidates have distanced themselves from these guys. And does the Oath Keepers and the 3%ers basically saying we're not part of this? Does that give them the sort of the oxygen and the legitimacy to maintain their nut job, forgive me, bona fides, and still sort of say, like, we're not part of those 18 guys or whoever it is up there? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that basically the calculation? Like, as long as the Oath Keepers are not with them, we can still be right with all the would-be militia people?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, and that's the amusing thing about groups like the Oath Keepers is that they claim they're going to be out there protecting citizens and that they have all this civic mindedness, but they have zero accountability when it comes to this kind of stuff. You remember a lot of the Oath Keepers showed up at military recruiting offices immediately after the attacks in Chattanooga, and came out, it was just these civilians showing up with their AR-15 strapped to their backs, walking in front of these offices that were typically out in like mini malls,
Mm-hmm.
and at one of these, one in Massachusetts, one of the Oath Keepers who showed up to defend our military people dropped his AR-15 and it fired off three rounds.
Well,
and
it's just signaling that this is not a soft target.
And Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, immediately went to work and found out that the guy really wasn't a member of the Oath Keepers and said,
not.
no, he's not one of us. So therefore, we have no responsibility for this.
Right. Liberal infiltrator.
Yeah.
Now, probably a member of the Black Panthers.
Right.
And let's talk about race. I mean, well, I want to talk about race. How much of does this intersect with race? I mean, clearly on an anti-immigration perspective, and obviously it's, we can't let the Syrian refugees in because they could be terrorists. I mean, there's at least these sort of like these fig leaves here, right?
Right.
And we know what happened when Clive Bundy actually had the opportunity to explain to everybody his perspective on the world and on America and the Negroes. How much of this is driving this? I mean, because my sense is like when these guys want to give the land back to the people, it's a pretty narrow subset of the people, it seems to me, they want to give it to.
Yeah. No, it's always white folks. I would say that race is kind of the current that underlies most right-wing extremism, but a lot of layers get thrown on top of race, so that it's hard to really dig through and find it. But yeah, I think your bottom line is a lot of these people are what they really hate the federal government for is giving away welfare money to those people,
Right.
those brown people. What they really hate when they're mad at the federal government, it's for taking taxes away from people like them, hardworking taxpayers. That's who hardworking taxpayers is a nice euphemism for white folks. And these guys use it all the time.
Wait,
So-
place this in the context of, I mean, are we spending, or explain to us why we're not spending too much time talking about these, these 20, and again, with all due respect, guys, if you're listening out there, if they haven't cut your power out yet, I just think these guys are just a bunch of losers. I mean, and they're not they don't seem to me to be as brave as they claim to be. I mean, why don't they, they could, as far as I'm concerned, they could just take a garbage scow and go 10 miles off the coast of the country and do the same thing, set up their libertarian free paradise or whatever it is, and it would have the same amount of impact that they're doing now. But and I know you got to go in a minute, I guess. But put this into the broader context. I mean, is it my imagination, or does this stuff only come up when we have a Democratic administration? I mean, honestly, because I remember all this stuff happening during the Clinton administration too.
That's right.
But not so much during the Bush administration. So, I mean, is this like, when they say they're the tip of the spear, are they just sort of like what the Koch brothers, sort of create this environment, and then there's an encouragement of like, pull the Overton window, way to the right, by doing this crazy stuff, and we'll satiate this impetus. We'll scratch this itch when we get into in charge of things.
Oh, I think that's exactly the calculus. I think that this stuff gets encouraged by very much corporate entities, people with a lot of money, and that role is overlooked, and I think Fox News plays a huge role in this, in moving that Overton window. But it's not just Fox; it's all of these talk radio stations. It's all of the right-wing media, all of which is pretty well financed by right-wing corporations. So, the underpinning is, there's a lot of money flowing through. And it's very toxic, and it basically creates this Frankenstein monster like Donald Trump, that suddenly here's somebody that's tapping into all this right-wing populist sentiment that they've been brewing up in their cauldron, and they don't know how to control it now. It's wildly raging out of control, and the level of xenophobia and fear-mongering and hate-mongering that are being stirred out of this whole phenomenon is just incredible. And it's really bad for the country. It's really bad for both sides. It's not just conservatives and liberals who are being hurt by this. It's everybody.
David Neiwert, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure. Well, always disturbing to talk to you, but nevertheless a pleasure too. Thanks so much.
You betcha, Sam.
Bye-bye.